Hello and welcome to Titanic Legacy, a podcast that explores Titanic's lasting impact through conversations with today's creators, authors, artists, historians, filmmakers, experts, entrepreneurs, and as of today, for the first time, musicians who continue to produce creative work inspired by the Ship of Dreams. If you are tuning in at home, doing chores, driving to work, at the gym, wherever, whenever, however you are listening, thank you for giving us your time and welcoming us into your lives for the next half hour or so as we talk about Titanic and her long-lasting creative inspiration and impact. This is Titanic Legacy, the podcast. I'm your host, Paul Carganilla, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with our guest, Patrick Cornelius Vida. But before we bring him aboard, let me tell you a bit about him. He is a professional violin player, currently one of the first violins in the Lower Bavarian Philharmonic Orchestra, and in several smaller groups as well. He is a music teacher, teaching violin from beginning to advanced students for the past 12 years. But Paul, are you doing the wrong podcast here? This isn't your creative podcast, your Cove pod. Why is this a Titanic Legacy episode, you may be asking yourself? Well, if you listen to our last episode of Legacy here, you heard author Angelica Harris give a brief explanation and introduction of the RMS Olympic Steinway Association. And that was as we were winding down the last episode, but I wanted to get a deep dive, go further into the story this association and their goal. So here to educate and enlighten us on this group and its goals, our guest today is the president of the RMS Olympic Steinway Association. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to Titanic Legacy podcast, Patrick Cornelius Vida. So great to have you, sir.
Oh, wonderful, Paul. Thank you so much for inviting me. It is an honor to be on this show, and I wish you a good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world.
Wherever we are is right. We usually begin by establishing, where are you? I am in Southern California, where it is a scorcher today, 112 degrees. And how is it where you are, and where are you?
Well, I'm in Austria. So the very place where the former governor of California comes from. And you might recognize the accent, although I think it sounds a little bit better for your ears. In Austria, Upper Austria to be exact, close to the city of Linz, 2 hours away from Vienna. And we also had a very hot day here, thinking in Celsius, though, 30 degrees, which is terribly hot for this time of the year.
Yes, it is. It is a scorcher. There's a heat wave, I think, burning the globe right now. But we are cool and inside, and so happy to have you here along with us. Can't wait to dive in. Before we talk about your journey with music, let's talk about your journey with sailing ships. Have you always had an interest in old steamliners, or how did that passion or interest come about?
It is an interesting coincidence that my father was a captain on the Danube, and I remember him coming home or visiting him on the ship. But my fascination, so it has always been in my life, starting at a very young age, but my fascination with Titanic and ocean liners started when I was still in primary school, with so many, with the movie SOS Titanic from '79.
Wow.
And that's for the first time heard the name. I was 8 or 9 years of age when I first saw the ship and heard the music, these beautiful, unforgettable tunes, Bethana and Elite Syncopations by Scott Joplin. And that's when both fascinations started for Titanic and for ragtime music.
Wow. That's two great passions and interests from one source. That's a very, very convenient package there for you to light your heart's fire and set you on a path to creativity as well as the historic impact of these steamships. And so tell us about how that path, that journey toward becoming a professional violinist came about.
Well, I started to play the violin at the age of 5. I come from a musical family. My mother taught the accordion. My grandfather played the clarinet and the violin. And apparently they saw some talent in me, or so I'm being told, and started to play at 5. And at 15, I had to make the decision whether something professional would develop out of that. And I did. I was accepted at the university in Vienna at the age of 15. And I graduated with a master's degree at the age of 27, and then found my way into a professional orchestra, full-time orchestra, just in Germany, an hour from where I live in Austria. And the way this works is that 200 people apply, 30 are invited to audition. They all audition behind a curtain, and one gets the job, one or nobody. And I thank God every day that this was possible, and that I could turn my higher calling into my profession. And after working in the orchestra for a year or two, I started to teach, and this has developed into a class of 27 students. So it's a beautiful life, and I'm allowed every day to hand over the flame of music to people of all age and aspirations. It's a busy life, but it's a hard and beautiful life, like the Jedi would say.
Love the Star Wars reference. It is something this feels really funny because, so I have 3 podcasts actually, but one of them is specifically focused on creators and their creative journey. And I feel like I'm in one of those episodes right now because I always say, it's commonly said, not just me. I'm the only one who says this, but it is so rare to be able to make a living doing what you love, and especially when it is in the arts. I think it's especially difficult. But so to hear that you're able to do that and pass it on, I talk about all the time on my other podcast how important it is to continue to pass on art to the youth, the younger generation. So get them off their iPads and computers and put an instrument in their hands. And it sounds like you have great joy in doing that.
Yeah, and I think history and the arts are very often connected. You cannot quite separate them.
Well, that brings us perfectly to the point of having you on today. You are the president of the RMS Olympic Steinway Association. How did this all begin?
Right. It still seems to be like a dream. I started the piano at the age of 15, and it has been my second instrument ever since. I also teach 6 piano students, and it is just a great, great love. And, I play Bach, Mozart, up to Schoenberg, and 2 dozens of others every day for hours. So for some weird reason, no composer has ever given me so much what is the right English word? Solicitation and joy, like Scott Joplin. So I've been playing ragtime for 20 years, and probably I'm the only one in Austria here. So when I found, honestly, after COVID, I shut down dozens of Facebook groups, like many of us have, and joined only those which concerned topics I was interested in. So I joined every ocean liner, Titanic, Olympic, White Star Line group out there. And suddenly in one of these groups, somebody posted in Germany, RMS Olympic, a la carte restaurant, first class, piano, Steinway, upright, vertigrand, rediscovered and restored, and now being put on display and is out there for sale. I almost fell off my chair.
Sure.
Knowing who traveled aboard the Olympic first class, especially in the 20s, and who certainly might have heard and played that piano. I said, what? I watched 2 videos. One was in German, one was in English. And then I kind of like understood what I was seeing. I still couldn't believe it. And then I checked this gentleman out, a piano salesman from Germany. And I found out, well, this is 800 kilometers away from me, approximately 500 to 600 miles, I'd guess. Well, I could just drive there. If I have the chance in this life to play on a real piano that traveled aboard the Olympic for 23 years and was played by Chaplin, Einstein, Marie Curie, and people in Fritz Kreisler, or heard by them, I'm going to do it. Let's just take an 8-hour drive. Why not? There's no speed limit in Germany, right? So I wrote to him. I wrote to him on Facebook, and I'm astonished until this day that I'm the only artist that has ever approached him for that reason. So in September of 22, I traveled to Germany. I met the grand old lady, and I could talk an hour just about the impression she made, outwards and inwards. You know, the movement, the emotions it caused in my soul, the sheer overwhelming experience of kind of grasping the thought, this is the real piano of the Olympic, and its identical twin sank with the Titanic. It was the sound of the Olympic class. I confess, I kissed the piano goodbye after, these pictures, I'm going to talk about them in a minute. I kissed the piano goodbye and thought, well, this was a once in a lifetime experience. Got back home, the season at the Opera House started. Try to practice the piano in every free minute when I'm not chained to the violin in the orchestra. And the piano, I couldn't let go of it. It had left a mark in my heart and my soul, and I kept track of it. And I was curious about, where is it going to go? Who might buy it? And after half a year, I learned that it was transferred from Germany to the UK, to Leeds, close to Manchester. And suddenly, in all these Facebook groups, people were writing about it. Wow, there is a piano from the Olympic. Why, it is now in England. And I thought, well, have you guys all been sleeping out there? I published 5 videos 5 months ago. So I went back to the drawing board. I recut the video. It is either 3.5 pieces or a 19-minute long piece with an interview. I did the English subtitles myself, reposted it, and suddenly it hit a few thousand clicks, and people understood, there is a guy who has already played it. Interesting. In July 23, when my holiday was starting, I kind of, 7 weeks, no orchestra. I had to see it again. I said to my wife, darling, will you allow me to travel to the UK just for 3 or 4 days? I just have to see the piano again. Well, she was, thank God, my dear wife, she was not opposed to that. I booked a flight. A friend joined me, made the arrangements with Best Broad Pianos in Leeds, informed the owner. It's a kind of weird connection because it is for sale in England, but yet it is owned by a German. He's the one who rediscovered it and restored it, but he thought he could sell it more easily in the English-speaking market, or so he thought, at least. So I flew to England, and I saw her again. The pictures you had just shown are from that second visit. That was September 2nd, 23, my 39th birthday. Yeah, these are my own pictures. You can see my wedding ring on the piano there. Right above the keys in the middle. I took tons of pictures. It is just so amazing, and especially when you know how it looked like before its restoration. You know, all the gold was gone. There was polyester varnish on it, which has no business on a piano. And they did a fabulous job recreating all these waves and gold inlays. And it was a second once in a lifetime experience. And during that second visit, I was able to record 4 pieces. Don't forget, I do this in my free time. I am a violin major, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you put it. So it takes quite some time to prepare the stuff to make a professional recording on the piano. However, I got the tour of the atelier from Melvin Vesprode. And here is now coming the most important thing, why this association came about. Whilst he was giving me the tour, he was telling me, can you believe it, Patrick? After its rediscovery and restoration, we informed all the museums and all the great institutions out there. And none of them, except for one, has even responded. It was only Branson and Pigeon Forge that were interested in renting it out for 1 year, which was not attractive for the owner. And I was shocked as a Titanic enthusiast.
Yeah.
I said, here we have an artifact, a living, breathing, sounding artifact that can be heard and experienced and felt, and not an artifact which can be seen through a glass vitrine or in a black and white photograph or video clip. This should be treated like Titanic's whistles, like the clock of the Grand Staircase, or the violin of Wallace Hartley, if it is the real one. But it should not be chained to a wall in the UK, because if nobody is interested in that fantastic artifact, what happens after enough time has passed?
Why do you think it is that the interest isn't there? Do you think it's because it wasn't Titanic, so it was sister ship?
Exactly. And that is the nonsense I have been hearing for months to some degree. So I was genuinely afraid last September that one day a rich person might just drop by, for whom 100,000 is not much money, buy the thing and let it disappear into a private collection, an attic, or even worse, basement. And it took a while to set in. The next day, I traveled to Anik, performed again in the first class lounge at the hotel, which was another mind-blowing thing. And when I came back home, I published the videos, 8 altogether of that trip to the UK. And I suddenly was invited by Joshua Anderson Raymer, who introduced himself as the social coordinator of the Titanic Book Club. I was invited pretty much like you have invited me to talk about myself, my passion for Titanic, its period, its music, and my trip. And whilst I was preparing for that lecture, honestly, I remember I was sitting here in the middle of the night because the time difference was almost like ours. And I thought, you know what? As if somebody would be giving me a thought from a higher entity. If no institution or museum is willing to take care of this grand old lady, maybe the institution that takes care of it has to be founded. During the meeting, I said this out loud for the first time. This was last October or November. And then it was Angela Kaiaris, whom we had on your show the last time, who introduced herself as a living relative-in-law, because her uncles-in-law were the 2 waiters, the Paracchio brothers, in the a la carte restaurant. Now, when I heard that, I almost fell off my chair for a second time, and she was the first one who said, I would be honored to work with you on that. I would be willing to make this happen, because my thinking was, also the White Swan in Anik in Northumberland was not interested in the piano. The general manager didn't even respond. And I was told by some people who worked there, don't you give it to the hotel. It will be sold off to the first best bidder. And most likely this could happen in any museum. So my thinking was from the beginning, an association should be formed, which is run by experts from various fields: historians, musicians, maritime artists, advocates for descendants, and so on. An association where 8 or 9 people have to decide together, so that not one single person can ever do anything wrong or harmful to the instrument. And then the story went on. Angela and I had our first meeting, and suddenly Joshua reappeared, the gentleman from the book club. He was interested. Would you like me to join? I said, well, of course. It needs more than 2 people for an association. A day later, he introduced me to Kent Layton. And Kent Layton, who is not only a renowned author and historian, many people I think don't know that he's also a piano technician. So the right man to take care of such an instrument. He works with similar instruments all the time. And since the book club meeting, a certain Christopher A. Mulholland had been chasing me, who specialized in painting Titanics or the Olympic class deck plans, freehand and oversized, magnificent work, which is now being sold at Pigeon Forge. And suddenly, here there was one crazy Austrian, passionate enthusiast and professional musician, together with 4 Americans, who were all willing to help in this endeavor. Since I am Austrian, and I know the association's law here, it was natural to found the association here because it is protected by the law. It is almost being treated like a limited liability here. So the piano would be safe and all the participants would be safe. I had 3 musicians, friends of mine from Austria, whom I had known for 20 years and whom I would entrust my life with, join as board members. And that's how the association was formed. We made our intentions, we made the owner known of our intentions, who immediately was in full support. Well, apparently because he had not found anybody interested or passionate about it.
That's
And
wild.
we made it is absolutely wild. And we have made an agreement that we have 1 year for half the price, make a down payment, and then have a second year for the second half of the price. And because you said it's wild, and concerning this nonsense, well, it is not Titanic. Well, yes, of course it is not Titanic, but this piano was made by the same hands in the same factory by the same people from the same pile of wood as its twin on Titanic, which had been on Olympic before, but the a la carte restaurant was too small during Olympic's maiden voyage.
I was going to ask you, do you know like how similar the refinished product is here to what it originally was? Is it pretty accurate, pretty spot
Well, it is pretty spot on. So all these, let me show you something. I would have to get up. I'll just describe it. So these, I mean, I could show you a few pictures as well if you like.
Sure. Why don't we give you a chance to grab those, because we want to hear it. You mentioned you recorded some tunes while you were there on your second visit. I want to share with our audience here
Oh,
one of
yes.
those tunes.
Good idea.
You mentioned Scott Joplin.
Mhm.
This is one of his pieces called Weeping Willow. I think he put this out in 1903, if I understand. So this may be one of the tunes that any of the passengers on Titanic or Olympic may have heard played on pianos, either this piano or the exact twin piano
Yeah.
on either Titanic or Olympic. And here he is, Patrick Cornelius Vida, performing himself Weeping Willow by Scott Joplin on the RMS Olympic Steinway piano. You can almost smell the sea air. Oh, what talent, what skill you have, sir. And I mean, that is fantastic piano playing.
Thank you so much.
And just the sound of that piano, it's gorgeous. You can just like, just hearing the music, the rag, I just picture the sights and I smell like I said, it just evokes all of the senses of the old maritime cruise liners across the Atlantic. And wow.
Here is a very important thing, which which I was told actually by Charlie Haas. He got it right. I mean, what we have here is the original sound of the Olympic class. I quote, "We have seen Titanic and Olympic in black and white pictures, in short video clips in the last 30 years now from the wreck. But what we have not had up until now, that is the sound from that period, from an actual White Star Line ship. And this piano is, for the first time in 70 years, currently the only and the first possibility to re-experience that sound. Of course, there are now questions because the piano has been restored. Is it the actual sound? And I've been dealing with this question for all my life when it comes to ancient violins. So we do not know what a Stradivari sounded like when it left the workshop 300 years ago. But even today, it is still a Stradivari, although it consists of 60% of original wood. The piano, of course, had to be restored. It has just too many moving parts. So what was recreated or restored with original Steinway parts are things like the strings, the hammers, the whole mechanic. Of course, otherwise it would not be playable. But what is original, and that's the most important thing, is the soundboard. You know, the big wood at the back of the upright piano, which actually vibrates and brings the sound from the instrument out into the air. Mm-hmm. So it is by any means the closest thing we will ever get to what it sounded like at the night of the sinking, when the Wideners gave their party in the a la carte restaurant and the musicians played outside. Because on Titanic, that piano, its twin, was placed at the aft grand staircase. And there is a more detailed story to where the pianos were on these ships and why. But it is the closest thing we will ever get to what the original sound was like. And whether the mechanics had to be replaced or not, it is still the very same piano with the same serial number, which was confirmed by Steinway. It came from a private home in Ireland 14 years ago to Best Brought Pianos in the UK, in Leeds. And its identity was not known. It was not until they got a hint and started to disassemble it, when they found the serial number engraved in its frame. And the call to Steinway confirmed the identity, ordered in June of 1912 and delivered to the Olympic in November of 1912 as a replacement for the lost identical twin. This is just crazy stuff.
I just got full body chills, man. That's
yes.
Amazing. Wow. And so you made a deal with the person who's selling it, that if you put down half of it this year and then pay it off next year, you will do what with it?
Of course. The whole purpose of our association is to preserve the piano for the public and for future generations. Now, RMS Olympic Steinway Association is a branch association of the Association for the Maintenance and Preservation of Historically Significant Instruments. Oh. So the goal is to secure the ownership that has been thought through. No private individual should own it. It should be owned by an association, which is a legal entity over here. And then it should be lent to a museum or to various museums down the road to give it a semi-permanent home in order to be experienced by hopefully hundreds of people every day. And we have been working on this, and we have so museums that are interested are Pigeon Forge, Branson, the Peoria Riverfront Museum close to Chicago has approached us after our New York Times article had been published. Now, even the Times has written about this. Meanwhile, there is an exhibition in southern Germany that has expressed its interest. The sad thing is that neither Belfast nor Southampton have ever responded, not even to us. But they would make beautiful homes for the piano as well. So I'd be more than happy to see the piano in a museum where it is welcomed and taken care of. The museum would not have to pay any fees. We are a nonprofit organization. Small donations for its maintenance would be nice. And we would certainly, with a quintet in the original formation, give concerts on a regular basis. So that is the intention. It should get a second life and be experienced by as many people as possible for years and decades to come.
And what ways are we going about raising that money?
Yeah, we started online. So a probably naive thought was, there are Facebook groups out there with 350,000 people. The New York Times article alone has probably reached millions. And you might want to think that if you have a group with 300,000 and every third person donates $1, you can achieve that goal easily. So the purchase price is 100,000 pounds, which is $125,000 or $28,000, I think, a little bit less in euro. And that's what we did. We flooded all the groups with postings, videos, etc. And the reality online seems to be that people basically like something, they leave a thumbs up, and then they continue scrolling.
Right.
So the exposure to hundreds of thousands brought in $4,000 or $5,000. Ridiculous. Then we changed strategy and started to approach patrons, potential patrons, or people who would agree to a financial plan. We started to approach these kind of people in person meetings, companies, business people whom I know, or people whom I know that I know somebody who knows somebody.
Sure.
And 3 weeks later, we ended up with where we are currently standing, which is 25,000, which is not a quarter of the goal has been reached, which is not bad. But we need until the end of the calendar year that same amount, or the owner, the German gentleman, Mr. Maywald, reserves the right to sell it and has even threatened to sell it to a casino in China. So I hope every American who is listening now has all red flags and alarm bells ringing. What the hell would this piece, forgive me, of Western history to have to do in a Chinese casino? This would be the worst thing to happen to it. Man, if it is so feasible and urgent, why hasn't he done that? So some doubts are allowed and some critical thinking is healthy for sure, but we better come up with the down payment comes December 31st of this calendar year.
Well, you and I have started to chat about and brainstorm some ideas of how we can reach that goal. And we're going to continue that conversation. But for anyone who's been listening, been watching on YouTube, you can head over right now, right this second, click on through to rmsolympicpiano.com. You can learn everything you need to know about it. But the most important thing is that little donate button right there. Anything you got, $5, $10, 500, whatever. It'll help preserve this important piece of maritime history, Titanic history, really, as a twin piano of the one, of course, that was on Titanic, built, as he said, from the same pile of wood and the same ingredients. They are twin pianos, and one is at the bottom of the ocean in the Titanic wreck, and the other one is here. We have the chance to preserve it, to keep it alive for future generations, to, of course, celebrate the history of it, but also inspire future historians, future musicians, and just be able to appreciate it going on into the future. Don't let it get lost in a casino somewhere overseas. For some reason, we have a whole lot of Titanic artifacts in a casino out here in the States, but we don't have to talk about that in this episode. We asked you to before we played the video, if you had some original photos of it from before it was restored.
I have brought up this article, which I have written for the German Titanic Association, of which I'm a member. And not only of that one, but it has all the pictures which are important for this topic. So right down here, excuse me. So here we see the Facebook post, the initial Facebook post, which attracted my interest. And well, you can see here already a 3D rendering, the finished restoration, and a picture to which I will get back immediately. And this is me in Cayman, near Dortmund, Germany, during that very trip from which we have seen the video. And well, here you see the serial number.
Wow.
The serial number on the frame, 157550, which has been confirmed by Steinway. So, and when they first found out about its identity, this is what it looked like. You see all the gold features gone. You even see this beautiful part in the middle gone. But what raised the suspicion of the owner were these waves here on the top and some waves here on the bottom, which are not so visible because of the resolution. I apologize for that. And this aroused his interest because Mr. Maywald is a specialist when it comes to historical instruments. He rediscovered pianos from Queen Victoria, Hermann Göring, and historical figures like that. So he thought, well, this must have something special to it. So the next one was the discovery of the serial number. And then they went into the process of restoration. It was brought from Germany to Poland because he has bigger workshops there. Here in this picture, you can see the waves on the bottom, on the column more clearly. And one might ask, so where did you get the knowledge from how this middle part was supposed to look like? Well, he reached out to collectors all around the world, and it just so happened that a collector in Australia owns, he got it at an auction, owns the original drawing, the original sketches from the White Star Line.
Wow.
And you can see this perfectly here in this picture. This is from directly was auctioned off in Belfast and now sits in Australia. And they faxed this and other pictures with these details over to Germany. And this is how they came to know how to restore that part of the piano precisely and with historical accuracy. And then there is another hint, which is this picture here, which shows the twin piano. So it was colorized by a gentleman from Russia, Roman Potapov, who does brilliant work also in his Facebook groups. It doesn't exist out there, only I have the colorized version. And so this is the twin piano with the other serial number, which is sitting in this picture in the first class a la carte restaurant on board Olympic during her maiden voyage. So this is the piano, the first piano, which then was put off Olympic into storage. Then it was brought onto Titanic because she had a larger enlarged a la carte restaurant. And this is the very piano which is most unfortunately lying on the bottom of the North Atlantic. And so it was this picture, this documentation from the White Star Line coming from a collector in Australia, what helped turning this into this.
Beautiful.
And then, of course, the inside life of the piano had to be redone. I mean, if you like, I can send you this article. I had it translated to English for my American friends, of course. And here it is mentioned. A new action, the new dampers, bushings, bridges, hammer, strings, felts, and pins, and other details had to be installed. Otherwise, it wouldn't be playable. But nonetheless, it remains the very same instrument, and we don't know if it doesn't even sound better than in 1912. We will never know. There were no recordings, but it's the closest thing we'll ever get to.
Absolutely fascinating history and amazing story of restoration, and we hope and pray that it does not get scattered to the wind and winds up in somebody's private collection or in a casino in China. Well, I've taken way more of your time than I asked for this evening. I thank you so much for this deep dive. We're going to continue this conversation. I urge everybody out there, if this story moves you, if you want to help this, keep this treasure from the Olympic class among the public for everyone to enjoy, share the link, tell its story, continue to keep this in people's eyeballs and talk about it, let people hear about it. Head over to rmsolympicpiano.com, give whatever you can for this great cause, and as I mentioned, we will keep the conversation going. But thank you so much for being with us today, Patrick.
Oh, thank you, Paul. I'm deeply touched. It's been an honor to be here, and I thank you for your time. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for your time and your attention as well. Every small amount helps. Please help us to save and preserve this artifact, which can be heard and experienced for future generations.
Yes. And before we wish everybody happy Titanic trails, I'd like to ask all of our friends who enjoyed this conversation to subscribe to the Titanic Book Club newsletter. Link is in the info for this episode. And of course, the YouTube channel. If you've been listening to the audio podcast and you haven't been able to enjoy the photos we're talking about, head over to YouTube, Titanic Book Club, the videos there of this recording. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a positive review, of course. I want to say thank you one more time to our guest, Patrick Cornelius Vida.
Greetings from Austria. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for tuning in. And until the next episode, seize the day, follow your heart's fire, and make each day count.